We are in 1584. Johannes Kepler is about to start a new phase of his life as an intern at the convent school of Adelberg. Away from his parents and more exposed to the politics and religious conflicts of his time. Unfortunately for him, there were conflicts everywhere. So we must build an understanding of what was going on before we can proceed to Adelberg. I've asked Aida to conduct a short interview on what I have learned about these times. But it was not short enough, so we have cut it in two.
Why does a Kepler fan want to discuss history?
Yes, indeed, I'm a Kepler fan. My admiration started from his technical accomplishments, but grew astronomically when I started to dive more deeply into his difficult life.
What in history did he have to cope with?
The constant mix of power struggles and religious conflicts. He had to move his family multiple times, carefully watch his words, and he loved words but was not so good in watching them. And his peace and harmony-seeking mind struggled with the aggression surrounding him.
Alright, where shall we start?
With the birth of Jesus at roughly 4 or 5 BC.
Jesus was born BC? I'm already confused.
Another miracle. Most historians now believe that to be his birth year, mainly because he was born when King Herod was still alive. The whole question how many years ago Jesus was born, or in which Anno Domini year are we now, started with a monk called Dionysius in 525. But he made an error in his calculations.
Dionysius, huh? Maybe he had a bit too much.
Maybe. Interestingly, in 1613 Kepler himself published a study where he argued that Jesus was born a full 5 years before the start of our present day count. A little known fact and a beautiful illustration of his enormous curiosity and drive to find the truth.
Interesting indeed. But 5 BC or 0, it is still almost 1600 years before Kepler was born. Do we really need to go that far back in time?
Yes! Jesus was the Son of God, the God that created the universe, the source of harmony, the being to whom Johannes Kepler was completely devoted.
Fair enough. So, what did the world look like then?
The Roman Empire ruled over much of Europe and the Mediterranean. Julius Caesar had been dead for 44 years, and in another 114 years the empire would reach the height of its territorial expansion. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in Roman-controlled Palestine, but at the time he was not seen as a religious threat to the Romans.
Why not?
Well, rather than engaging in direct conflicts with other religious beliefs, the Romans preferred to assimilate local traditions into their own.
How did they do that?
Essentially by incorporating foreign gods into their own polytheistic system.
Huh?
The Romans inherited their polytheistic model from the Greeks, maintaining a pantheon of many gods with Jupiter as the king deity and Juno as the queen goddess, and other familiar names, Saturn, Mars, Mercury and Venus, were part of this divine hierarchy, along with countless others. There was always room for new deities. The Jews in Palestine, however, believed in only one god. But as long as they obeyed Roman rule, they were free to practice their faith.
So, what about Jesus?
As I see it, Jesus posed a threat not to the Romans, but to the Jewish religious establishment, which derived its status and power from traditional religious structures. And Jesus introduced radical ideas, declaring himself the Son of God, advocating for the poor, preaching repentance, and urging people to forgive their enemies. His teaching empowered the marginalized, which was deeply unsettling to those in power. Ultimately, his opponents managed to present him to the Romans as a political rebel, and despite their reluctance, the Romans executed him by crucifixion.
Good Friday.
Yes, about 30 years after his birth. But his ideas gained followers, and those followers multiplied, not just in Palestine but across the Roman Empire and beyond. And as their numbers grew, so did the unease among Roman authorities, who saw God and Jesus' teachings as a competing source of authority against the emperor.
Did the Romans fight it?
Oh yes, they did. I'd argue that as Roman emperors increasingly saw themselves as divine figures, the suppression of Christianity intensified. Christians, who recognized only one God, refused to worship the emperor, making them targets of persecution.
Quite unsuccessful, it seems.
Indeed, there were too many believers, and eventually Emperor Constantine officially tolerated Christianity and even converted himself around the year 320.
That sounds like a glorious victory.
Well, by that time the Roman Empire was already in decline and would soon split in two in 476. But before that, the first St. Peter's Basilica was built in Rome, laying the foundation for Christianity's central authority. And this provided a sense of continuity even as the empire crumbled. The continuity is nicely echoed in its official name, the Holy Roman Empire.
For eternity?
Well, until it too began to fracture, closely experienced by Johannes Kepler. But before that, there was the pivotal year of 1517, and that is the starting point of our next episode. Stay tuned.